Hi everyone, I'm Elise Padilla, the director of NAMI's STAR Center. Thank you for joining us as we explore peer support programs and talk to some awe-inspiring and empowering peer leaders in our communities who are going to share their stories of recovery, work in the community, and self-care tips. If you're new to the STAR Center, please check us out at peerstar.org, where you can learn more about us. What we want to do here is to support you to connect with the power of your own story, embrace leadership opportunities, and build communities where every person and family coping with mental health and substance use challenges has hope for a meaningful life. I look forward to sharing my story, the stories of others, and learning from each and every one of you through the STAR Center podcast titled Hear Me Now. Today on Hear Me Now, we're speaking with Voth. He's here to talk to us today about asking for help, both personally and professionally. Voth is a native New Mexican who currently works as the Associate Director of the Albuquerque Center for Hope and Recovery, a peer-run drop-in center in Albuquerque, New Mexico. As a peer in recovery, Evan has experienced the discrimination of those working through substance use disorders, mental health issues, and homelessness, and has focused his career on developing leaders in the community and advocating for those in recovery through education, peer support, and workforce development. Evan appreciates opportunities to serve on advisory groups, provide direct service as a certified peer support worker, and strives each and every day to pay those back who supported him on his recovery journey. So, Evan, thank you so much for being here with me today. I'm really excited to hear about your view on asking for help, how it's worked for you personally, professionally, how it's gotten you to where you are today, and any other tidbits that you have that you can give other peers who may be going through a journey similar to yours, those who are just embarking, or those who are learning new skills, because I think it's really important that we learn how to ask for help. Otherwise, we remain within our comfort zones in a bad way, meaning we don't step out and we don't try new things. And if we don't have people to guide us along the way, then we never really become a master of a craft. Tell me a little bit about your journey, how you got here, anything that you'd like to share with people just to exemplify how asking for help can be a positive experience.
Well, thanks, Elise, for having me here. And thanks for asking for help in making this podcast.
Hey, I did.
Yeah. It's been a long journey to get to where I am right now. Most of my life, I struggled with mental health and substance use issues. I've since been in recovery for a solid 6+ years. And my recovery journey kind of began when everything fell apart. My family wouldn't talk to me. I was going through legal issues. I had to do mandatory counseling. And I was really angry about it at first. I didn't want the help. But somewhere along there, something clicked. And I realized I didn't want to live my life the way I had been. And at that moment, when I said, I think I need some help with this, things started to change. I was able to be a little more open to suggestions, a little bit more open to trying new ideas. I think one of the biggest things that really helped me in the beginning was learning how to set goals and make an action plan towards them and actually take the action to make those happen. And it's through a series of setting goals and obtaining them, setting goals and working hard to obtain them, that I ended up enrolling in school. And, I was going to be an EMT when I enrolled in school. And then I was going to be a business major, and I realized I didn't want to be in management. And then it was a lady on an airplane on the way back from San Francisco that discussed social work with me. And I was like, oh my gosh, social work, that's CYFD and CPS. And she explained that it's so much more than that. And so I changed my degree to social work. Through that, I became a certified peer support worker with the state of New Mexico, and then ended up doing an internship with Albuquerque Center for Hope and Recovery. And I think that's where asking for help really started coming in, when I started my educational journey in social work, because I had no idea what I was doing. Most of my life, I had done blue-collar work, and I had no idea what I was doing, and I needed so much help. There was a big part of me that just wanted to pretend like I knew what I was doing. And I realized that wasn't going to cut it, because I had so many questions that I needed answered. And it was under that I was able to work with some really good mentors to be able to answer those questions I had. Through a lot of it, there was a lot of me being scared. But when I asked for help, a lot of that subsided. When I asked for help, I was able to get the guidance I needed.
So that's kind of where our paths intersected, is I met that Evan who was coming into a field that didn't really have a lot of experience in on the professional side, right? We'd all kind of been through it ourselves on the personal side, but having somebody come in and say, hey, this is interesting, I like what you do, always kind of makes us stand up a little straighter, like, yeah, I do have a cool job. But to have somebody come across and say, hey, I'm new to this, I've had struggles, I've had lived experience, and now I want to do what you do to help the old me. That's really where it's groundbreaking, and that's the power of peer support. And it's something that I've talked about in the past few episodes is that's what was life-changing for me, was the thought of impacting somebody else's life. And that helped impact my life. And that's what helps my recovery every day. And that's what helps me grow. And so you coming in and looking for a mentor was big, because there have only been a few times that I can name where I was so bold to say, I'm not sure where to go or what to do. Can you help me? Because a lot of that, like you said, being open brings a lot of vulnerability in admitting that you don't know something. And for me, that was kind of one of my crutches in trying to self-medicate and manage things on my own, was I had to pretend for my own confidence level to know everything. And so then when I realized I didn't know it, that's when I would stumble and fall. And it's part of life. We don't know everything. We're not born knowing everything. And so having the power to say, I'm not sure, can you help me with that, is really big. So knowing how important it was to you and how it's helped in your trajectory in life is really empowering. But how did you overcome your fears of, first off, identifying as someone with lived experience, which can be vulnerable in its own right, but also saying, okay, but aside from that, I want to know how to do this kind of work, how to get into the field, what are the pros and cons, the ups and downs, how do I get started, what classes should I take? Those are two very heavy things to come into one place and hand to people. How did you deal with that? How do you deal with that, of just identifying in those two ways?
That's a big question.
Okay, so how have you found comfort in identifying as a person with lived experience?
So for me personally, my recovery kind of depends on me being able to help others through the process. My recovery is based in peer mentorship through the different programs that I work in my personal life. So the idea of adding value to my life through being of service to others has been paramount and fundamental in everything I do. And so to be able to identify is pretty easy. To be able to identify as someone with lived experience with others who are currently struggling comes really naturally to me. Mm-hmm. However, when I saw that you could intersect that in a professional realm, there was a lot of give and take. There was a lot of trial and error into how and when and to what degree I should disclose. I can disclose to someone I'm working with some of the more intimate details of my mental health and substance use when I was actively engaging in that, as opposed to someone in the professional community who may not understand some of those intimacies and some of those very specific things that we do and behaviors that we engage in. And I learned that by blurting it out to someone in the professional community and have them looking at me dumbfounded and like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm considering doing business with this person. And so I learned very quickly, you got to pick and choose what you disclose and with to whom. When I'm working with someone who comes into our center, it's very easy to identify on a level of understanding with them. But in the professional and even the educational environment, most of the time it's just saying I'm someone with lived experience. And that's as far as it goes.
Which is ambiguous enough for people, like you say, that aren't kind of privy to the work that we do and being as involved in the peer movement. When you're amongst fellow consumers of behavioral health services, it's a lot easier to say, oh yeah, me too. Let's share that story and let's be open together, because it's a very natural, safe space. When you go outside of that, sometimes into the more private sector, more professional world away from behavioral health, it becomes very iffy. You're not as sure as the steps you take. So I think it's really important to point out that you brought up creating a safe space, and that helps foster that ask. If you can come to somebody who has created a safe space, whether they have lived experience or they're just open to being asked those kinds of questions to being a helper. And so I think it's really important to notice that in ourselves, whether we're asking for help or we're offering help, is to create that safe space of, you can come and ask these things. It's non-judgmental. It's that unconditional positive regard that you learn in social work of what you say can stay here. We can talk it through, and being able to foster that relationship of, like you said, the give and take and the trial and error of knowing when to and when not to and things like that.
And I think one of the biggest, most fearful items for me that I had to get over was dealing with my criminal record. Unfortunately, as we know, mental health and substance use issues most likely come with legal issues, and I had a lot of them. And when I first came to Albuquerque Center for Hope and Recovery, I remember I disclosed to you because I had to, but you never went into specific details, and no one ever asked me what it was and what the degree of it was. All you cared about was that you saw someone that genuinely wanted to help someone through their own lived experience. And that just got me. So many places I've been so afraid to even mention it. When I was working some blue collar jobs, if it didn't come up, I wouldn't say it. And sad as it may seem, I see people today that will self-disclose, either being a person with lived experience or anything that goes along with that. And even though their background may come up clean, they're still being denied for jobs because they self-disclosed. And so that's probably one of the scariest things. But in asking for help and having that mentorship from you and from my executive director, Maxine Henry, you both have just helped guide me in a way and let me know that there's a way to be honest and carry a sense of integrity to overcome any of those barriers.
And it's about redirecting too. I mean, we're going to come up on times that we do have to disclose. Maybe it may not be the most comfortable situation, but saying, you know what, I'm going to take on this little uncomfortable piece for the greater good, knowing that it will make a greater impact in things. I mean, being a self-advocate, being an advocate for others, that's something that, stepping out of that comfort zone can be difficult. But if we keep that goal and that idea of, this is greater good, I can put myself out there for that greater good, makes it, beneficial. And that's what we talk about is in peer support. It's so much more beneficial than it is taxing. If we do it right, then we end up gaining so much more than we give out as peers in the process, because we get to see that growth in people. And so making sure that we have goals and, an action plan is something you touched on a little bit. And we've talked about in other podcasts with things, but how do you understand the goals, and how does asking for help tie into that?
So, like I mentioned before, like goals, once I learned how to set goals and set those action plans, the goals kept getting bigger and bigger. To me, there has to be a vision of where I want to end up. It doesn't have to be a perfect vision, but I have to have some sense of direction as to where I'm going. And oftentimes asking others for help comes from that. Even today in Albuquerque Center for Hope and Recovery, when I'm thinking about what do I need to be doing, there needs to be some kind of goal. Because if I don't have a goal, I don't know what direction to go into. And oftentimes I have to ask help in even setting that goal, because I don't know what the goal should be. Okay, I know I want to do this. I know I want to help the organization raise $2,500 in a fundraising campaign.
But you're not an expert in that, right? And so it's about finding people to bring in that helps you meet your goal.
Yeah, so if I'm asking for $2,500 in a fundraising campaign, that's well and wonderful, but I don't really know how to get there. So what I'm looking for, what I need help with, and what I need to vocalize is that I need help turning it into a SMART goal. It needs to meet all of those criteria. I don't know them in order.
So they're specific?
They're specific, they're manageable.
What are SMART goals that you referenced for those that may not be as privy to the lingo?
So there are goals that need to be specific. They need to be measurable in some way. They also need to be achievable. They need to be realistic, and they need to be time-based. So all these things kind of help shape a goal into something. It shapes a dream into being something that can actually be accomplished. And so by doing that, we can actually set up an action plan to be able to take the steps necessary to achieve that. But with the example of the fundraiser, I may not know exactly all those criteria of being a SMART goal, but with the help of a mentor and with the help of strong leadership, I can definitely get there. One of the things that I absolutely love about the mentors that have been in my life is they've been on this concept of servant leadership, where they're not telling me what I need to do and they're not telling me how to get there, but they are helping me in achieving my goals. I say, this is what I want to do, and they're there to support me and help me achieve that goal. And I think that is just so amazing. It makes it a lot easier to ask for help when you have people in your life that are willing to say, what can I do to help? And I think being not only in the field of social work, but also in the field of peer support, that is so beneficial and that is so powerful that we are able to do that for each other. But just like with me, with the people that I help on a day-to-day basis, I have to be willing to show up. I have to knock on the door and I have to do the work, but the help is available.
Right, knowing it's there. So let's rewind to when you first came to ACHR, as this bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, little fresh peer, straight off the assembly line. And there was something engaging about you. I don't know what it was, but you had goals in mind of what you wanted to do, and you came in with an ask. Very clear ask. It was for an internship coming here. You didn't let the insecurities of before, of your past doings, of the experiences you went through stop you. But tell me what was going on in your head. Because now we can look back on those times and say, oh yeah, let's laugh at that. But when you came in, you seemed very self-assured and you sat down and said, this is where I want to be. This is what I want to do. And this is who I want to guide me. Help me get there. And it was like, wow, that was a breath of fresh air, because honest to goodness, Evan, I never could have done that. I have way too many insecurities to be able to put myself out there like that. And I have this air of knowing it all that I put on for myself. So that's one of the skills and one of the things that I really look up to you for. So tell me how that felt, if you can remember those days.
It seems like such a long time ago,
right?
But it really wasn't. I think that just comes from everything that I've gone through since that day. Maybe it helped that I came in here on like the first day after a vacation. I had just gotten back from the Pacific Northwest, and I think we actually scheduled our interview while I was on the road. No, but one thing that I've worked on since the beginning of my recovery journey, I came here about 3 to 4 years into my recovery. And one of the things that I had worked on with mentors in my personal recovery, as well as my counselors and therapists, was not acting out of fear or not doing something because I was fearful. Courage, as I see it now, is not the lack of fear or the absence of fear, but the ability to walk through it. And I knew that if I wanted to achieve my educational goals, when I came in here, I had the educational goal of wanting to be a substance use counselor. So when I walked in here, I knew I had the educational goal of becoming a social worker. And so I knew this internship was just something that I had to do. It was one of those things where I had to suit up, show up, put my best foot forward, and have faith that no matter what happened, everything was going to be okay. And that's one of the biggest things that I've learned in my recovery, is just being able to take a step back and know that it's going to be okay. As long as I've done all the work that I can do, the rest is not up to me. And I think that's really helped me in being able to walk through those fearful situations. But when I first came to sit in front of your desk, I had no clue what to expect. None whatsoever. I hadn't even properly done my research on the organization, and I didn't realize what a perfect fit I actually was when I walked in the door. So I think it was just really honestly taking a leap of faith and knowing this is something I need to do. This is on my step. This is on my action plan. This is one of the steps I need to take in order to achieve my goal. And it's just something I need to do.
So would you say, based on personal experiences, stepping out of your comfort zone has helped you grow or has been more difficult than it's worth?
One thing that I love that you and my mentor now always tell me is get comfortable being uncomfortable. There is no growth in comfort. There is no change in comfort. Any significant change and growth I've had in my life has come from extremely uncomfortable, extremely painful situations, whether it's dealing with loved ones passing on, whether it's dealing with staff members to the people I work with maybe having a really bad day, to any of those things, and being in a very, very uncomfortable spot and me not knowing what to do. Absolutely nothing, freaking out inside because I have no clue how to handle this situation that's just arisen. And through that uncomfortability, being humble enough to know that, to let someone know that I have no idea what I'm doing and I need help with this situation.
Yeah, we've talked about, throughout this podcast, we're talking about stepping out of your comfort zone and how beneficial it is, how difficult at first, but the more you do it, the more natural it feels. And that's where growth comes from. But we also talk about the inner critic and having that naysayer inside of us that kind of tells us, oh, well, don't try that. Or maybe you're not going to be the best at that. And so I've dealt with the inner critic for as long as I can remember. It's only in my most recent past that I've learned to deal with it and to change the dialogue, to say, the things that you tell me that my inner critic tells me I know that I'm not. And so I just focus on that. And so do you deal with the inner critic in asking for help? I mean, what do we do with that?
So first off, I am my own worst critic by far.
Absolutely.
No one can beat me up as well as I can beat myself up.
Oh yeah.
And it's just one of those, you talk about that inner dialogue. It's just one of those things that's always kind of been, I have set such high expectations for myself that sometimes it's not a good thing. You talk about being that achiever and setting those lofty goals. Having those high expectations, it can be a real burden sometimes. But what I've really had to understand is not to hold people to the same expectations I hold myself.
Well, no, I can see how it relates because having a support system, which you do, which you're great at, is having those supports, gives you people who will say, Evan, that is way too high of an expectation for you to have for yourself. So bring it down a notch. And so when we set these way overachiever things, I personally am going to change the world of recovery. Mm-hmm. We have those around us in our support system to say, good for you for having lofty dreams, but let's be a little smart, in the goals that we set. And we believe you are going to change the world. But what are some tangible things that we can do to get there? And so they kind of keep us from getting that overwhelmed sensation that the critic immediately throws at us, that it's too big, you can't do it. And so having that support system, being able to build relationships with people is really important.
I mean, really, one of the best things that I try and remember is I would never tell a loved one or my close friends, you can't do that. So why am I telling myself that? And really trying to change the words that I'm telling myself. With strong mentorship and being able to ask out, it can kind of get in the way. It really can. No one likes to admit they don't know how to do something. No one likes to admit something's gotten away from them. I don't like to admit when I haven't done my job the way I should have. And then it's like, well, why is it this way? It's like, well, because I kind of dropped the ball. No one likes that. But if I'm going to grow as an individual and be able to turn around and be there for the people that are going to ask me of help, I need to get comfortable saying, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to do this. I haven't done it the way I should. But also knowing like, this is what I've done. This is as far as I can go with it. I don't know what to do next.
Mm-hmm. So kind of the inverse of the old cliche adage of fake it till you make it.
Yeah, I don't really like that saying at all. Not one bit. I know we hear it a lot. And I think people can take it in a lot of different contexts. For me, if I'm thinking about fake it till you make it, I'm more along the lines thinking of like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to try it anyways.
Right.
But there needs to be a caveat to that. And there needs to be the addition of, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to try it anyways with some help, because the help's there. And it's on me, it's my ownness to be able to ask for that help. When I stepped into this role as associate director, I was shaking in my boots. And I tried not to show it because I didn't want to show any kind of like weakness, right, in front of other people. You know, I wanted to like blow everyone away with what I could do, right? And so I came in like shaking in my boots, but charging for it, right? And that's an example of that traditional, oh, just fake it till you make it. It's when I was able to kind of say, hey, this is what I know. There's a big part that I don't know. And this is what I need help with. And at that point, it's not faking it anymore because I'm being truthful. I know who I am. The people around me know who I am. My leadership knows who I am. And more importantly, they know what I'm not. And they know where my weaknesses are. And so, okay, let's work on those and let's move forward. And so being able to know that, yeah, I don't quite know what I'm doing, but I can get some help to get there.
And I've noticed in my own growth, you know, and asking for help and professional guidance and things, that people appreciate you asking for help to get somewhere a lot more than seeing you kind of crash and fall apart. Because if we try and fake it and say, you know, oh, I got this, people know that they set up an expectation that there's a learning curve and that's okay. And so it took me realizing that it's okay for people to know that I don't know everything, because then they can help me. They actually have more respect in the integrity that I show of saying, yeah, I'm not quite sure. Can you show me how to do that? As opposed to having to help me clean up my mess afterwards, you know?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Especially for me and anyone in any kind of authoritative position that, you know, has to be responsible to others. I think anyone will really understand that. Like, I would rather be bugged 5 times today than have to go to someone and say, why wasn't this done the way I needed it done? You know, and that's my responsibility too. You know, I can't just say, go do this, go do a project that you have no idea what you're doing and have it to me by Thursday. Well, you know, I need to make sure you know how to do it. But if you don't ask for help, I can't help you with it. And so I would much rather have that question asked beforehand. And knowing that from this side as the person offering the help, I understand how crucial it is, especially at the professional level I am at now, to make sure I'm asking for help when I need it. Because I would rather my lack of understanding in an area be dealt with internally with people I trust and people that I feel comfortable being vulnerable with than faking it till I make it and letting everyone else see. That way, by the time I go present it to others, I've already dealt with the insecurities. I've already dealt with the vulnerability. I've already dealt with the not fully understanding something. So by poking holes in it now with the people I'm comfortable with, no one else can poke holes in it.
Well, and that's really important. That's very key. Like, that's a little golden nugget right there, is realizing that having people around you to offer these critiques and this support is great because it gives you a safe place. But also remembering that the people you're asking for help had to ask for help at some point. Like, you came and asked me for help at one point, and just a few years before that, I had gone to ask for help in trying to figure out how to get these things done. And so it's kind of that chain of, I wasn't born knowing how to run an organization. No, I had to ask for help. And then in turn, I was available for you to ask for help. And so it's keeping that cycle going. And if any one of us shuts down pretending to know everything, we've shut down that cycle of growth for others. And that can lead into leadership. You know, how we talk about leadership and leadership skills. We should be here to grow other leaders, not just to have minions to do our bidding, because then we're breaking down that cycle.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I just took a local training here in New Mexico called the Emerging Leaders Nonprofit Sector. It was 4 classes over 4 months, a lot of great stuff. And one of the instructors I was talking to, great guy, we were talking about why our structure is the way it's structured. Why do we have a manager, a mid-level manager, and then all the employees, this very hierarchy system that all it is telling people at the bottom what to do. To me, that's just not the way I want to be led. It's a system that kind of keeps me where I'm at without possibility for growth. So when we turn around and we talk about servant leadership, it's exactly that. It's us getting to the top and turning around and reaching down and helping the next person up. Because who's going to take my place when I decide to move on? Well, no one, if I don't teach them how to be leaders in their own right. I'm actually reading this book right now called A Field Guide to Making Good Decisions. And it's really focused on small businesses and people in the nonprofit. It's not focused on higher level government decision-making. It's not focused on CEO decision-making. It's focused more on small business and nonprofit leadership. And even though it's called good decision-making, it's really focused on leadership. And it really talks about having those skills of being able to be transparent, having integrity. And it really gives good insight, once again, into that servant leadership and what it means to actually grow and actually help others to achieve. Because when someone's achieving their goals and they have that intrinsic motivation to achieve them, they're going to do so much more, not only for me and for the organization that they're with, but for themselves as well. And when you start growing, when people start growing and realizing that they can be the person they've always wanted to be and that they can reach their full potential as a human being, they do amazing things. I'm surprised all the time. And so that's why it's important for me to really be able to ask for help.
Yeah, it goes full circle, right? If you don't ask for help, then how can you give help or expect people to ask you for help if you're not willing to show that vulnerable side of saying, I have no idea what's going on right now. Can somebody tell me what page we're reading? Because I'm completely lost, right? It's the little things like that. We've all had those moments.
There's times I've had panic attacks in my office and I've had to call 2 or 3 people because I just felt like such a complete failure and that I didn't know what I was doing and I was going to ruin everything. And so...
Did they tell you that you were? Did they say, yep, you're a failure, you're going to ruin everything?
No, only myself, and that's part of some of the mental health stuff I deal with, right? And that's part of my own personal recovery to be able to manage those panic attacks when they happen, to be able to live a life where I don't need any kind of substances to find relief. And that's asking for help. To this day, I'm in a grocery store, and when I start feeling anything coming on, I have one person in particular, I call them, they call me, you're in Costco again, aren't you? I'm like, yes, I'm in Costco. And they'll just talk to me throughout the whole store. They know I'm asking them for help. And that's the importance right there. Because if I try and fake it on my own, if I try and do this by myself, I'll fail. And it won't be easy. Doing it alone got me into the morass of self-pity I was in before I started my recovery journey. Doing it alone got me into legal issues, got me into risky behavior type situations. But when I asked for help, my life started dramatically changing into what it is today. And it took a lot of asking for help. It took a lot of small steps along the way. Sometimes I'm still astonished as to where I've ended up from where I was. And it's absolutely amazing, and I become absolutely grateful. And I start looking to the journey ahead. And where it used to be filled with dead end, today it's filled with hope, and it's filled with limitless possibilities. And it just comes from being able to reach my hand out.
And so in talking about ways that you're going to grow and the things you're going to do, that's amazing and wonderful. But I always like to finish off with pulling out, what do you do for self-care to make sure that you are going to make those changes and those impacts in the community that you want to see? What do you do for you that keeps you happy and whole and healthy through all of this? Like, I would be nowhere without my yoga. Whether it's in my living room, it's in a studio, I find a studio wherever I travel to do it. And that's part of my self-care routine because it helps me clear my mind. What do you do?
Nice. I've actually been getting into a yoga practice myself. It's extremely beneficial. This idea of self-care has changed so much for me lately. I know a lot of times we talk about self-care and we talk about getting a massage or doing some yoga or maybe going to the gym if that's your thing, or whatever it is, bubble baths and day spas. But I've learned through a lot of hard lessons that self-care isn't always doing what we want to do, but doing what we need to do. I really want to go to my friend's house for game night, but I need to do laundry. I need clean clothes for the next couple of days. Otherwise, people might ask me to leave. I need the ability to say no. Sometimes self-care is the ability to say no. I'm sorry, sister, but no, I'm not going to the state fair with you, because to me that's just something that activates trauma. I do not do well in large crowds, and I know this. And so for me to be able to say no is self-care. Sometimes self-care is being able to set boundaries, not just with the people that you don't like, the people who may not be completely respectful or treat you with dignity. Those are easy boundaries to set. Sorry, no, ain't gonna talk to you. You're being rude and disrespectful. Like, I want nothing to do with you. Those are the easy boundaries. The hard boundaries are the ones setting with the people I love and the people I call friends and the people that I have to interact with on a daily basis. No one likes ruffling the water. No one likes creating the tension with the people that you're constantly interacting with. But if I'm going to continue on my recovery journey, if I'm going to be able to take care of myself, I need to be able to set boundaries and say, I don't appreciate it when you walk into my office unannounced and saying, next time I need you to knock on my door and wait for a response. Yeah, they might feel weird. What do you mean I got to knock on your door? Like, you should be available. Like, if I need help, you should be available, right? But I still need to set those boundaries. Yes, I will absolutely help someone after I deal with whatever it is I'm got going on.
And that's really big. That's one of my big self-care. That was one of the first things I embarked on in going through recovery, was I had to set boundaries because I'm a giver. I will not take, it's the hardest thing for me to take from anybody, but I will give everything I have, even to full detriment, because that's just how I was brought up. That's who I am. And so learning to set those boundaries meant I can't go through this with you right now because it's weighing too heavy on my heart. So I'm sorry, I want to be there for you, but I can help you in this other way. Or I don't want to listen to you venting again because you continue to put yourself in this situation. And it gets really difficult for me to have to deal with it all the time. Or, with family, that's not something that I can handle. I'm sorry, but that's your relationship. Don't bring it into my relationship. I'm not the mediator of the family. And setting those boundaries was difficult for other people, but I noticed it actually became easier and easier for me. And that's the beauty of peer support in it, is that we do with, we don't do for. And we set those boundaries for the peers that we walk with because this is their path. If I start to guide them down a path, it may not be theirs. And so being able to step back and set those boundaries for ourselves and for others lets others know where we stand in the work that we do, in our personal lives, in our recovery journey, but it also lets us know where not to overstep boundaries because we know it can be detrimental. So I really appreciate that you brought that up, because especially in this, when we're talking about asking for help, we need to know what boundaries to set. I'm not going to keep going over the same situation with you if you keep putting yourself in this bad place, right? That's a boundary I got to set and do. But, being there for encouragement and support, that's great. But I'm not going to do it for you. I'm not doing your homework for you, Evan. So don't ask. but I'll be there to help you find the answer.
Don't get me wrong. I love a treat yourself day.
Right?
I absolutely do. I love going to go get a massage and doing some yoga or going for a nice hike and blowing off my responsibilities, maybe spending a little extra money at the mall or something like that. Like I love that. And that's we absolutely need that too. Mm-hmm. We absolutely need that happiness.
Agreed. Moderation is key.
It's definitely that balance. Like, because I mean, I absolutely love to do all those things. But at the same time, I have to be responsible to myself. I have to be responsible to the organization that I work for. Mm-hmm. I have to be responsible to the people I work with. I also have to be responsible to the team members that work with the organization. And I have to be responsible to them in a way that helps them grow.
Well, I mean, I'm excited to see where this asking for help takes you, because I know you haven't asked for help for the last time. I know that you will continue to ask, but I'm even more excited to see the help that you're able to dole out to those that come after us, that those that come into this field new and excited and bright-eyed and bushy-tailed like you were. And to see you get to experience the opportunity of giving people a chance, of saying, hey, help me write a curriculum for a group that we'll never use, but it'll be great for you and it'll help you grow. So I'm excited to see all of these things happen for you. And I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here today to talk with us, because the wisdom that you have to impart will not fall on deaf ears. I know that you will continue to impact people, especially through this medium.
Well, thank you, Elise. I really appreciate that. You know, as being one of the first mentors in peer support that I've had, it's been a great journey. And you definitely helped shape me into the leader that I am today. And I know that you'll continue to be there if I need some help.
Unless it's to do your homework.
You don't want to do calculus with me?
Ooh, numbers. Okay. We might be able to talk about that, but no reports. I don't do reports anymore. I've given that up. But no, just continue to go on and be part of that cycle of asking for help and giving help and being the Jiminy Cricket we all know you are. Thanks so much, Evan.
Thank you, Elise.
I'm so thankful to the individuals who have come forward and been interviewed for the Star Center podcast. It's so important for individuals to be heard and to hear each other in regards to peer support and mental health. If you or someone you know needs assistance, please reach out to the following numbers. The SAMHSA National Helpline at 1-800-662-HELP, the NAMI National Helpline at 1-800-950-NAMI, or at info@nami.org, and of course the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-8255. Please again feel free to reach out to us with further information, but also utilize these national helplines for any issues that you may be experiencing, any questions that you may have, or just for an opportunity to talk with someone close. Thank you so much. We'll see you soon.